In the sixth series of Freeing the Butterfly Within, Brother Khalil Jaffer invited his audience to reflect on one of the deepest struggles of the human soul: addictions and attachments. He began by reminding them of what had been discussed the night before. The central theme, he explained, was that attachments to anything other than Allah slowly become barriers to spiritual growth. When human beings tie their hearts only to this physical world, its pleasures, comforts, and distractions, they prevent themselves from experiencing true inner transformation. Instead of rising to the level of the butterfly, they remain trapped in the limited existence of the caterpillar. Brother Khalil emphasized that the problem begins when a person identifies completely with the body. When goals, ambitions, and desires revolve only around physical satisfaction, habit gradually takes control of life. Human beings, he said, are creatures of habit by nature. That design is not a flaw. Habits were meant to help people attach themselves to Allah and to goodness. The real issue arises when those habits become attached to the wrong things. He described addiction in simple terms: a behavior repeated so often that even when it causes harm, a person feels unable to stop. Society often limits the idea of addiction to substances such as drugs or alcohol, but Brother Khalil reminded his listeners that addictions take many forms. Every human being, in one way or another, carries unhealthy attachments. Islam, he explained, teaches taqwa. A taqwa is fundamentally about freedom. It is about breaking the chains that prevent a person from becoming who they were truly meant to be.
When a person develops attachments to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is addicted to anything that is tied directly to this physical world and to his body, then that becomes a hindrance in his spiritual metamorphosis to becoming that proverbial butterfly that we've been talking about. And we have been saying that when we completely identify with the body, and our goal and focus and our movement, which is driven by our desires and intention, is towards fulfilling the needs of Tabi'a only, then because we are creatures of habit, we are bound to develop addictions. The fact that we are creatures of habit is not a flaw in our design. The fact that very quickly, when we think about something repeatedly, it sooner or later translates into action, and when we perform that action repeatedly, it becomes a habit. And when we perform something as a habit, it becomes a character, and when it becomes our character, it defines who we are, is not a flaw in our design. But it was created purposely so that we would become addicted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we attach to the wrong thing, but the tendency to form a habit and to attach is not a flaw. We also defined an addiction by saying that typically an addiction is defined as a habit that you perform repeatedly to a point that even if it is harming you or those around you, you are unable to stop performing that habit even if you would want to do so. And this sort of a definition is normally given when we talk of the common addictions that the world speaks of, like substance abuse, drugs and alcohol and so on and so forth. But as such, every human being has some or the other form of addiction, some or the other vice, so to speak. When Islam teaches us the value of fitrah, essentially what it is trying to teach us is how to be free from these shackles, from these chains, from these addictions that tie us down and prevent us from actualizing our full potential. And what is amazing is that the Qur'an actually mentions chains and shackles as things that tie you down and prevent you from becoming who you really should. In Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7 of the Qur'an, verse 157, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically tells us why He sent the final messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, after mentioning that this prophet has been described in the Tawrat and in the Injil, and they know from what they have been given in their previous books that this is the messenger that they were promised. Then when Allah talks about what He has come to do, He says, يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. He bids them to good, He enjoins them to do good, and He forbids them from evil. وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. And He makes lawful for them that which is good and declares unlawful for them that which is bad, that which is impure. And then He says, وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And He has come to relieve them of their burdens and to free them from the shackles that they are tied to. This is in the Quran. Which means that when human beings are left long enough without spiritual guidance, without a messenger or a guide from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of these addictions, they become shackled and their potential is reduced. One of the key functions of that messenger is to come and remove these shackles. It is to remove the myths and the superstitions that hold us from becoming who we really can. Today we live in the 21st century, but we are so driven by superstitions and myths. This is not unknown to you. We live in a very multicultural society here. We know of cultures where, for example, they will not purchase a home if you open the house door and there is a staircase in front. We know of cultures, for example, that if you give them a clock, it's a bad omen, it's a sign of death. They will totally freak out if you give them a clock as a present. We know of cultures where if a black cat crosses in front of them, it's a bad luck or bad sign. And we are immigrants. We come from places where we are known how we fear so many things other than Allah. From shaitan to jinn to somebody writing a ta'weez, somebody doing this and that. These kind of things, superstitions, myths, addictions, attachments, these are the things that prevent us from progressing to our full potential. The Prophet comes to free us from this. And you will recall the analogy of the cave that we gave, where human beings were compared to prisoners in an underground cave, staring at a blank wall, looking at shadows being thrown by a fire behind them, thinking this is reality. And it is a prophet who comes and removes those chains and shackles and brings us out of that cave to the open world and shows us what you were looking at was just shadows. This is the real world. Addictions do the same thing. They take us into that cave and they tie us in that chain and they hold us like that. And to explain this further, I borrow some verses of the Qur'an and I'm going to use that as an analogy. I'm not saying this is the tafsir of the verse. I'm saying I'm using these verses now as an analogy to explain this. What is it that an addiction and an attachment does to you? And these verses are actually from Surah Yasin, which is very familiar to us. Verses 7 to 10. لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ عَلَىٰ أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The word has become due on them, so most of them will not believe. Most of them are caterpillars. Most of them would rather stay in the cave. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا. We have placed chains, iron collars on their necks. فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ. So it is up to their chins. فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. So they cannot turn their heads. Remember that analogy of the cave. It's a perfect fit. Okay. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا. Then we have placed a wall in front of them. وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا. And behind them is a wall. فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ. And then there is a blindfold on them. فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. This is what addictions do to you. So when you have a chain, an iron collar on your neck up to your chin, and you can't turn your head, and then you have a wall here and a wall behind, and you're blindfolded, when will you see the truth? That is why وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. That is why, O our dear Prophet, whether you warn them or you do not warn them, it is the same. It will make no difference. They will never believe. Meaning that when a person is completely tabi'a driven, even if Allah was to send a messenger, even if He was to reveal a book, it will not make a difference. The first initiative has to come from us. We must be willing to remove that blindfold, to remove those chains, to say, I want to come out of that cave. When we're willing to hold the hand of that messenger and say, show me the truth. And to do that, we must be willing to let go of those addictions and those attachments. If one becomes addicted to tabi'a, they will resist fitrah, even if they know this is good for them. They will not be able to come out of it. Just like one who is addicted to drugs. They know this is harmful. You don't have to tell them what is the harmfulness of this because they have first-hand experience, but they cannot get out of it. They feel they're trapped in that. And the more they indulge in it, the worse it gets, the hungrier it becomes. Tabi'a is this by nature because it believes this is giving me pleasure. This is helping me flee from pain. This is what I need to survive, which is the characteristics of tabi'a. So it is like when tabi'a tries to satisfy a desire, it is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. We're talking of the harmfulness of addictions and attachments and why this hinders us from moving from being tabi'a oriented to being fitra oriented. However, we must remember that tabi'a is not evil in itself. I will have to keep reminding you this again and again. Tabi'a has a function. Its function is to regulate the needs of the body. Its function is to protect the body from harm. The reason why you instinctively fight or fly, fight or flee, somebody tries to hit you, you protect yourself. It's because tabi'a's function is to safeguard the body and protect it from harm. Tabi'a only becomes bad when it becomes excessive, when it becomes an obsession, when it becomes an addiction. That is when it turns evil. That is when it becomes zalim. That is when it becomes tyrannical.
To deepen this understanding, Brother Khalil turned to the Quran. He referred to Surah Al-A'raf where Allah describes one of the missions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as freeing people from the shackles that bind them. Without divine guidance, he explained, human beings gradually become enslaved to fears, to social pressures, to habits, and to uncontrolled desires. The Prophet's mission was to liberate humanity from these invisible prisons. Addictions, Brother Khalil said, are no different from physical shackles. They restrict movement, limit growth, and rob people of their freedom. He compared addiction to the famous analogy of prisoners trapped in a cave, staring at shadows and believing them to be reality. In the same way, addictions blind people. They trap them in a false world and prevent them from seeing the truth of who they are and what life is truly about. Brother Khalil also pointed to the powerful imagery in Surah Yasin, where the Quran speaks of people with chains around their necks, walls before and behind them, and blindfolds over their eyes. This, he explained, is exactly what addiction does. It limits vision, blocks progress, and prevents truth from reaching the heart. Yet he carefully balanced this message by reminding the audience that the tabi'a or nafs, the animal instinct within human beings, is not evil in itself. Its purpose is necessary to protect the body and regulate physical needs. Desire, he said, is not inherently bad. Without desire, human beings would not seek knowledge, progress, or even closeness to Allah. The danger begins only when desire becomes obsession. At that point, what was meant to serve the human being becomes its master. Addiction, therefore, is more than a bad habit. It is spiritual illness.
And addiction is also a sign of unhappiness. And I know this puts our guards up. We think, I'm not unhappy. I know what I'm addicted to. I'm addicted to coffee, I'm addicted to cigarettes, I'm addicted to this and that, but I'm not unhappy. Addiction is a sign of unhappiness. One who is in love will not be addicted and will give up addictions very quickly. You see, what happens is the unhappiness is not necessarily very obvious to others or even to ourselves. It sort of simmers just below the surface. It is subliminal. And we know this why? Because of the way we treat our life. If I was fitra oriented, if I was not addicted, if I was in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I would be so happy every morning that I woke up. I would be so happy to be alive. I would be grateful for life because I would see life as a gift from Allah. I would see my body as a vehicle that I'm using to evolve and develop my soul. I would cherish life. I would value my time because I'm fitra driven. I'm in love with Allah and I know I'm racing against time. I want to see how far I can fly during the time that Allah has given me in this world. But the way we treat our bodies and our lives, how do we treat it? We say, I'm not going to live forever anyway. I might as well enjoy myself, right? Life is short. How much am I going to do? I'm growing old now. So there is a sense of giving up on life. We take life for granted. We take our bodies for granted. It is almost, a psychologist might almost say that at some subliminal level, it is a form of suicide. We are saying, I really don't care if eating all this unhealthy food or smoking, kills me because, I'm fed up. It's the same routine, the same rat race, get up morning, night, struggling, going like a donkey around the mill, It has to end someday. That's the attitude we have to life. There is a sense of giving up. That is why I say addiction is a sign of unhappiness. We try to give up addictions. Everyone tries. But because the reason is not love, we fail to do so. Ask people who smoke how many times they have tried giving up and how many times they have failed. What was their reason? Their reason may have been, it's bad for health. My doctor says I should not smoke. My wife says I should not smoke. My friend has stopped smoking, so I want to try. Whatever the reason might be. Because it is for health, or because it is peer pressure, or because of some other reason, or my weight, or my health, or whatever, that is why it doesn't work. Because at some point I come back to the same question. If I'm doing it for my health, how long am I going to live? I might as well enjoy while I can. If I'm doing it because my wife says so, if I smoke when she's not around, she's not going to know, right? So the reason is quickly justified and dissolved. But if I fall in love, then the shackles fall apart. Now I don't have to find a reason. I don't have to try giving up the addiction. I just lose that addiction. There is no pleasure in that addiction because I have found something that gives me more pleasure. If you get pleasure from drinking coffee, it's very easy for you to give up tea because it is stronger. It has more pleasure. So if you become addicted to Allah, you will not have to try giving up the other addictions. They will simply fall apart. Now you might say, well, a young man who gets engaged and falls in love also doesn't feel like eating, gives up addictions quickly. If his beloved and sweetheart tells him, I'll only marry you if you give up smoking, he'll just throw the cigarette pack right away. Yes? The problem with using love with a creature to give up an addiction is that when you get to know someone or something very closely, you will also see their ugliness. That is why so many women complain to their husbands after marriage, you don't give me the gifts and say the nice things and the cards and the roses like you used to do when we were engaged. When you get to know anything or anyone very closely, you will see its ugliness. Why? Because nothing is perfect. So the only thing that you can find that is perfect, that you can fall in love with, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the result of having fallen in love and placed all your hopes in this human being, she is going to make me happy. You put all your eggs in one basket and then you find out she's not the, my soulmate chosen for me, or whatever that means, right? Then you revert back to the addiction slowly. And now it gets worse because you're even more depressed now. So the only solution to giving up your addictions is fall in love. And once you do that, then even your love for others will be for the sake of Allah. And when you love others for the sake of Allah, you will be more compassionate, more tolerant, less judgmental. You will see their flaws, but you will still love them. And you will learn that true love is not to love someone because they are perfect, but to love them despite their imperfection. Because that is how Allah loves you. Now, let us take a particular example of how our lives progress. How within our nature we seek perfection. We are constantly seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We mentioned this yesterday, that Allah says, إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ قَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانِ, O human being, you are constantly striving towards your Lord and you will meet Him. Even now, you think that your goal in life is to complete university, your goal in life is to marry so-and-so, your goal in life is to buy a Ferrari. But in reality, what you are seeking is Allah. You have just misplaced Allah, and for now, you think Ferrari is Allah. But you will discover in time it is not. So rather than chasing and running after something that will disappoint us, what we can do as Muslims, acknowledge right from the beginning that my fitrah seeks Allah, and my goal should be Allah, and the perfection I seek should be through proximity to Him. Everything else is temporary. I can have a desire for education, I can have a desire for career, I can have desire for family, that is all fine. But my passion, what really drives me, we said yesterday, all human beings move all the time, but our movements are driven by our intention and our desire. If that intention and desire is driven through fitrah, through my divine nature, not through my animal instinct that only wants pleasure, fleeing from pain and survival, then we said there is nur, there is light in everything I do. Then I can do everything else that other human beings do. But my life is filled with joy, there is happiness, there is tranquility, there is no that simmering unhappiness. I don't need some addiction to keep me happy every day. I don't have to get up in the morning and say, I have to have my cup of coffee, otherwise I can't function. I no longer become a human being who says, if I don't have my pillow, I cannot sleep. I no longer become a human being who says, I must have my cell phone with me all the time. If I don't have my cell phone, I get withdrawal symptoms. Because I am complete. There is nothing else I need to complete me. The fact that I don't need this coffee and this particular pillow and this cell phone and this internet is not because I have given up on life or I am depressed. It is because I am in love, but with something greater. I can still have that cell phone, I can still have that pillow, I can still have all that. But if I lose it, it doesn't bother me. Okay, this is very, very important. And it is for this reason that, what is the opposite to that? The opposite of that is, if I don't acknowledge that Allah can only be my true love, then another thing we will observe in our personal experience in life is that I will constantly jump from one desire to another desire, from one addiction to another addiction, from one attachment to another attachment, from one hobby to another hobby. And by doing so, I'm simply replacing one God with another God with another God. But what I'm actually seeking is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah points to this fact, that if you do not surrender and become my slave, you will be enslaved by much else. When you enslave yourself to Allah, He sets you free. When you enslave yourself to other than Allah, it shackles you, it imprisons you. In Surah Al-Jathiyah, chapter 45 of the Qur'an, verse 23, Allah says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you then seen him whose God is his lust? Which means, ilah, the Arabic word Allah comes from ilah. Ilah is that which you adore. And therefore, my Allah might be the one to whom I pray and I do ruku and sujood, but my ilah might be something else. My ilah is that dream, that passion, that reason that gives me the desire to wake up in the morning. Your ilah has to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the Prophet Ibrahim ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam, wanted to show this to his people. His people used to worship the stars and the moon and the sun, and he wanted to show them that human nature wants perfection, wants the best. And unless one comes to this realization that there is nothing but Allah that is perfect, we go through these hoops where we constantly seek one and then skip and skip and skip, which is again not entirely out of purpose. As we have said, it is this conflict and this disappointment and these struggles that help us come out of that cocoon, help us come out of our shell and realize our true potential. And this is in Surah Al-An'am, which is chapter 6 of the Qur'an, verses 76 and 79. So what Ibrahim alayhi salam did was, he pretended to be one of them, a worshipper of stars and the moon and the sun. فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلِ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي. When night fell and he saw a beautiful star, he said to his people, this is my Lord. هذا ربي. فلما أفل قال لا أحب الآفلين. When that star disappeared and set, he said to them, I don't like things that set. This cannot be God. فلما رأى القمر بازغا قال هذا ربي. Then he saw the full moon. He saw the moon coming out, rising. He said to his people, this is beautiful. This is my God. I'm going to worship this one. فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الظالمين. When the moon set, when it began to wane and become a crescent and disappear, he said, indeed, if my Lord had not guided me, I would have been one of those who are misguided. فلما رأى الشمس بازغة قال هذا أكبر هذا ربي. Then he saw the sun rising. He said, this is the big one. This is my Lord. I am going to worship the sun. هذا أكبر. فلما أفلت. Then when the sun set, قال يا قومي إني بريء مما تشركون. When the sun set, he said, oh my people, I now disassociate myself completely from what you worship. إني توجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين. I now set my face and I direct myself, my movement, my intention, my desire completely only to the originator of the heavens and the earth. And this is my pure path. I am Hanif and I shall not be one of the polytheists. So he gave them by example how you can take something to be your God and then it will disappoint you. Then you will look for something brighter and bigger, then it will disappoint you. Then you will look for something even brighter and bigger, then it will disappoint you. And you will keep going through that in life until you come to this conclusion. This ma ana min al-mushrikeen, I am not one of the polytheists, is not just in the sense of I am not one of those who worships idols. It is also in the sense that I am not attached to anything in my love that will compete with my love for Allah. That is why shirk is of different kinds. There is shirk al-khafi. How can I truly say to Allah that I love you when I know that in my heart I love something else or someone else more than I love him? That is why we have in Hadith al-Qudsi that when a man says, I love you, O Allah, and then he sleeps through the whole night and does not wake up for Salatul Layl or Namaz al-Shab as we call it, then Allah says to the angels, he is a liar. How can a person who claims I am his beloved sleep? Have you known a man in love to sleep? In your own experience, when you are engaged, could you sleep at night? When you are in love, you cannot eat, you lose your appetite, you lose your sleep. Allah says, you claim to love me, but you sleep like a drunk all night. Where is this love that you claim about? It is false. We have to look at this in our lives and look at your own life from the time you were a child. You remember when you were a child, there was this toy you wanted and you thought, if I have this, I will never want anything else. Dad, just buy me this bicycle. I will never ask you anything again, just this once. But after you got that bicycle, after a while, you wanted a motorbike, didn't you? Then you wanted a car, right? You wanted this watch. If I get this watch, I just want this Xbox. I will never ask you for anything. Then when a new version comes out, you yourself, you have this iPhone, you have to have this. Now the new one comes out, the old one loses its charm. It no longer has value. Your dream is to graduate from high school. Once you graduate, it no longer has any appeal. Now you want to graduate from university. So it is your nature to want something bigger, something higher. Why go through all the hoops? Why not just jump and say, my obsession shall be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else shall be a means towards that. In other words, our desire for greatness can be part of our fitrah, but it is misplaced when tabi'a interferes and that desire and that obsession is not rooted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Brother Khalil then turned to the emotional root of addiction. Addiction, he explained, is always a sign of unhappiness. Even when people deny it, even when they insist they are fine, addiction reveals a deeper emptiness within the soul. If human beings were truly living according to their fitrah, their pure God-given nature, they would wake up each morning grateful and at peace. Instead, many wake up restless, dissatisfied, and disconnected. They move through life trying to escape from it rather than appreciate it. This attitude, Brother Khalil said, exposes an inner despair that many are unwilling to admit. Most people attempt to overcome addictions for practical reasons: fear of illness, pressure from family, or concern for reputation. But such motivations rarely last. According to Brother Khalil, only one force is strong enough to truly break addiction: love. He explained that when a person falls in love, even worldly love, they often find the strength to abandon habits they once thought impossible to give up. Yet human love is limited and imperfect. The only perfect object of love is Allah. If a person truly falls in love with Allah, Brother Khalil said, addictions gradually lose their power. They no longer need to be fought. They simply fall away. Love for the righteous servants of Allah, such as the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, can also elevate the soul. Loving Imam Ali and Imam Hussein alayhimussalam inspires transformation, but ultimately all true love must lead back to Allah. He reflected on how every human being is searching for something. People chase wealth, success, relationships, and recognition, believing that the next achievement will finally bring fulfillment. Yet satisfaction never lasts. The reality, Brother Khalil explained, is that what every human being is truly searching for is Allah. People simply misplace Him and give Him different names: money, status, pleasure, or comfort. When Allah is not at the center of life, even the greatest success feels empty. But when Allah becomes the ultimate goal, no external loss can destroy inner peace.
When we don't know our fitrah and we don't realize that the real goal is Allah, then what happens is we jump horizontally from one God to another instead of jumping vertically. You see, fitrah wants qualitative progression. Tabi'a doesn't care about quality. Tabi'a wants quantitative movement. It wants a horizontal move. Look at your own lives. Look at our own lives. I ask you, I ask myself, how many times have you thought about taking different courses that you never took? How many times have you thought of taking different hobbies that you then gave up? How many times have you thought of different professions and businesses and Googled and searched it to death and then didn't do anything about it? How many times have you thought of migrating to different lands and you searched and searched and searched and then you still didn't do about it? And how many times do you still continue to do that? Why? Because you are searching for something. You are looking for happiness. But you will not find it anywhere else except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tabi'a wants to stop immediately. Tabi'a says, Hada Rabbi, this is my Lord. Let's just stop here. We're now comfortable. We're in the cocoon. Let's not rock the boat. Fitra says this is not our destination. We still have to go far. Tabi'a is impatient. It is like a child. I want it now. Fitra is like a parent. It constantly lectures Tabi'a. It constantly disciplines Tabi'a. It constantly forces Tabi'a to take actions that Tabi'a feels is unfair, but it is needed for the evolution of the soul. Let me give you another example by which we might understand how, as human beings, most of us are Tabi'a driven. Let's forget about this world for a moment. Let's talk about the hereafter. What do we want in the hereafter? We want to go to Jannah. Now we ask Islam, what is there in Jannah? They tell us there is palaces, very good. There is fruits, very good. There is rivers flowing of honey, of milk, beautiful. Mansions of gold and emerald and ruby and perfect weather. You don't grow old, you don't fall sick. Beautiful. There are beautiful spouses, hur al-ain, perfect. Now we ask them, what is the greatest pleasure in Jannah? They tell us the greatest pleasure in Jannah is having a conversation with Allah. When Allah speaks to you directly, one-on-one, it is so pleasurable, it is beyond anyone's imagination. It is even more pleasurable than when Musa alayhi salam was talking to Allah one-on-one. He was Kalimullah, he used to talk to Allah one-on-one. But even more than that, and it is for this reason, there is different grades for people in Jannah. For some, we are told Allah will speak to them once a day. For some, Allah will speak to them 70 times a day. For some, Allah will not speak to them, but He will look at them. But when He looks at them, they will swoon with desire and pleasure. For some, Allah, they will have access to Him whenever and wherever they please. It sounds beautiful. What is it in us? We know that has higher pleasure, but it doesn't sound so appealing. I mean, come on, talking. How much pleasure can there be in talking? It is because our tabi'a is speaking. What it knows familiar. Tabi'a is driven by the body. It is driven by physical needs. It only knows physical pleasure. It only knows fleeing from physical pain. It only knows survival of the body. And because we are tabi'a driven, we cannot imagine a pleasure beyond physical. It is for fitrah to say, I want perfection. And even though I cannot imagine it, I will not settle for anything less. For fitrah, this is a no-brainer. It will only want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tabi'a will say, okay, I'll take that, but can I also have this? Because tabi'a is also greedy. We have talked about this. Now, tabi'a is pleased with everything trivial. Tabi'a turns to look at every distraction. Fitrah is responsible. Fitrah is focused. Fitrah has a sense of purpose. It has a sense of urgency. Fitrah also wants comfort. But fitrah wants something that is permanent and eternal. The fitrah within you, the divine nature within you says, I want happiness, I want comfort, I want pleasure, but I don't want something that will only last for 20, 30, 40 years. I will not settle for anything less. I want something permanent. And we know this deep down. That is why Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, the price of your soul, of your nafs is Jannah. So do not sell yourself short. Do not sell yourself for anything less than Jannah. If you sell yourself for this world, you have shortchanged yourself. But that your fitrah knows, your tabi'ah doesn't know. Tabi'ah wants something even if it is superficial and temporary. So fitrah says, I want comfort and I will work hard for it, but I want it in the hereafter. Tabi'ah says, we'll worry about hell when we get there. We don't have to worry about it now. Let's enjoy while we can now. And again, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, how beautiful is that suffering that you endure, after which there is eternal bliss. And how sad, how bad is that pleasure that lasts only for a short while, but after which there is eternal punishment. When you keep this in mind, then you don't want to trade. Your fitrah will not want to trade something temporary for something permanent. This is important. And that is why another name for our butterfly is Insan al-Kamil. And we have already said, Insan al-Kamil is someone who is complete. He is not driven by addiction. He is not desireful of that which is temporary. It does not complete him. He is in love. He will only take that which is permanent, that which is eternal. And it is this that Allah wants to also teach us through calamities and suffering. We talked a bit about calamities and suffering. In Surah Al-Hadid, which is chapter 57 of the Qur'an, verse 23, Allah tells us why we suffer afflictions. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا أَتَاكُمْ. That you may not despair over what you lose. You may not become depressed and despondent completely over what you lose, nor become proud and rejoice exceedingly over what you gain. In other words, that you do not become tabi'a driven. You do not become just a glorified social political animal who is driven by fear and greed. When the stocks go up, you become overly happy. When the stocks go down, you become depressed. It is to teach you not to be tabi'a driven, that Allah sends you calamities and suffering. Tabi'a never surrenders. We said fitrah always surrenders to Allah. When calamities come, fitrah says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. I come from Allah and I am journeying back to Allah. Tabi'a doesn't say that. Tabi'a says what Fir'aun said, that is given to us in Surah An-Nazi'at, which is chapter 79, verse 23 and 24. He gathered all the people. فَحَشَّرَ فَنَادَى فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. I am your exalted Lord. Tabi'a is like that. When you leave it unharnessed, it sits on you as your God. It runs without any control. There is another quality about tabi'ah that we also need to know, that we will elaborate on in the coming nights. Tabi'ah is fluid. It has no loyalty. It will tell you, this is my passion and desire today, and then as if it never knew this, tomorrow something else will be my passion. And then the third day, this will not be important, something else will be my desire. This relationship will be most important to me, then the next day something else will be more important. Fitrah is loyal, it is fixed. Why? Because fitrah only wants Allah. So there is no change. It remains fixed on that. It does not constantly change. The other reason why fitrah is loyal is because fitrah has tasted the love of Allah at some point. It has experienced that connection to Allah. In other lectures that we have given in the past, like yearning for Allah, we have said that the idea that I am disconnected from Allah, that I don't feel His presence, that I don't feel His love is an illusion. You are always connected to Him. It is simply that it is clogged. That connection is blocked. The conduit is clogged. It is clogged with attachments and addictions. When I give up attachments and addictions and I unclog that, the connection is already there. That is why Allah does not tell you, find me. He tells you, simply deny the other gods. I am there. You only have to say, La ilaha. That's all. When you say, La ilaha, there is no other God. What remains is, illallah. There is no God but Allah. You cannot find Allah by finding Him, because He is already there. When was Allah absent that you need to find Him? You can only find Allah by removing the veils and the obstacles, which is what? Which is our addictions and our attachments. You remove them and He is there. He is present. And that is why, as in the example of the month of Ramadan we gave, that when we become even a little spiritual, we begin to sense that connection, that clogging begins to remove. So our unhappiness and our addiction is directly caused because of the fact that we are missing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives. And the day we find Him, we will cry like a little baby cries when it sees its parent after a long time. And then we will never want to let go of that connection. There is so much love, there is so much warmth that comes from Allah to His creation. Now, let's talk for a moment here. Why is it that nothing satisfies us or pleases us except Allah? We said it is in our fitrah that nothing pleases us or satisfies us except Allah, because we have tasted that connection. But why? Can we prove it? I give you an analogy, another set of verses of the Qur'an that, again, I'm not saying is the tafsir of the verse, but I'm using these verses as an analogy to explain how this connection with Allah works. But you see, the Prophet Moses, Musa alayhi salam, when he was born, the Pharaoh was told that a child will be born to the children of Israel who will overthrow your kingdom and kill you. So he passed a law that any male child that is born to the children of Israel should be killed immediately. And while this massacre was happening, Musa alayhi salam was born. Now you know the story, that the mother of Musa put him in the basket, sent him down the river, and Allah, to show His might and power, says, "O Fir'aun, you want to kill the one who's going to overthrow you? I'm going to send him to you, you're going to raise him." So he goes down the basket to Fir'aun, and Fir'aun raises his nemesis in his own palace. When the baby first comes, and the wife of Fir'aun, who is a mu'mina, who is known as Asiya, she takes the baby, she's looking for a wet nurse, a foster mother, to feed the baby. And every mother who tries to feed Musa alayhi salam will not drink the milk of that mother. The mother of Musa had sent Musa's sister to follow the basket down the river She comes to Asiya and says to her, shall I show you a lady from whom he will drink? And she brings the mother, and this is how Allah reunites Musa with the mother. Now, in Surah Al-Qasas, chapter 28 of the Qur'an, verse 12, Allah says about Musa, وَحَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَرَاضِعَ مِنْ قَبْلِ. And we made it haram for Musa. We made it forbidden for Musa to drink milk from any other mother from before. What would have happened if Musa would have drunk from any other woman? He would never have found his mother. For him to find his mother, he had to stay loyal to the original source from which he drank that milk. Now, so as long as we are attached, as long as we are addicted to other than Allah, to illusions, we will not find Allah, because we are drinking now from a source other than the original source that we were attached to, that we had drunk from. That is why we don't find Allah. For Musa to go back to his mother, in Arabic the word is mother, but is also your source. So for Musa to go back to his mother, he must not drink from any other woman. For us to find our source, we must not be addicted and be in love with anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now here there is still another question. Musa alayhi salam was a baby. How did he know not to drink from other women? We might say, maybe Jibreel was there, pushing his face away, stopping him from drinking. Or we might say he's a Nabi. Maybe he had that knowledge within him. Isa alayhi salam spoke from cradle. Maybe Musa knew. Possibly. But there is a verse in Quran that hints at this. Before chapter 28 verse 12, if you go up a little bit, chapter 28 verse 7, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ. And we revealed to the mother of Musa, give him milk first, nurse him. Thereafter, when you fear for his life, then put him in the river. Now, normally Allah does not send wahi to mothers. He does not send a revelation to mothers to nurse their children. It is natural. It is tabi'i. Secondly, it is common sense that any mother would have done this without being told by God to do so. Today, an ordinary mother, if she was leaving home and she knew she will not be able to feed the baby immediately, she will think, let me feed the baby so the baby will not be hungry until the next time I can feed the baby. So it is logical that the mother of Musa, even if Allah would have simply told her, put him in the river, she would have nursed him first before putting him into the river. But some of the mystics who look at the irfani meaning of this verse, they say that when Allah told her, give him milk first, what he meant was, let him taste the original first, so that he will know the difference when he goes down. If Musa had not tasted his mother's milk, he would not have been able to judge what is his mother's milk, what is not his mother's milk. If you had not tasted the love of Allah at some point, then you would have been satisfied with other addictions and attachments. The reason nothing satisfies you, the reason nothing pleases you, is because you have tasted your original love. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ. That verse of Surah Rum that we have been talking about. Your fitra, your natural disposition that cannot change, is that before He sent you here, He has made you taste His love. So you can change jobs, you can change careers, you can change relationships, you can do what you want. Nothing will make you happy except Allah. You have tasted that. It is in your fitra. Just awaken that fitra. You will see that after that you will not want anything else. That is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Kullu mawludin yuladu ala fitratil Islam." Every child that is born on the fitrah of Islam, is born on that idea of wanting to worship a higher being, of surrendering to Allah, of being in love with Allah. Then it is his parents that alter him and train him differently and teach him to bow before idols and teach him to believe that God has a son and teach him other things that take him away from being attached to one and only one, his Lord. So it seems as if we tasted something. That is why nothing makes us happy except this. And Allah doesn't hide it from us. In Surah Al-Ra'd, which is chapter 13 of the Quran, verse 28, He tells us very clearly, "Ala bi-dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub." It is, lo and behold, let it be known to you, it is only the remembrance of Allah that will give you peace and tranquility. Ala bi-dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. We know this, but we're still looking for it here and there, and it will take its time. So what happens is we turn our face to an addiction, then we realize this is just a pacifier, there's no milk in this. Then we go to another addiction. Well, this is milk, but it's too watered down, it's not the real thing. And we keep turning, and everything turns out to be false. Initially, when a child is young, because it has more tabi'a and less fitra, and fitra is not mature, fitra is easily fooled in the child. So it follows tabi'a. Everything that tabi'a says, I want this will make me happy, fitra goes along. Tabi'a says, I want this will make me always happy, I won't want anything after this, fitra goes along, because it is not mature. But in time, fitra learns, these are just pacifiers. This is not the real thing. That is when fitra wakes up. That is when I keep following my addictions, but within me something says, you are wasting time, you are wasting life. How long are you going to continue like this? You are causing me pain. Time is running out. Your body is going to collapse. It's going to die out. It's going to leave this world. Evolve me. Turn to Allah. Give me my true love. Your fitra is screaming for its true love. But we are denying it because of these addictions and attachments. And so every morning I get up, I have a God, I have an attachment. It might be an addiction to food, for example. And this God, this desire for food grabs me by the neck and says, give me food, feed me. And like a slave, like a dog on a leash, I follow my addiction. When I choose Allah over my addiction, I remove that leash. I tell my Tabi'a, you are not my God. Inni bari'un mimma tushrikun, like Ibrahim said. I will not worship this and that. My God is Allah. He is the only one I will be a slave to, because by being His slave, I am free. I am not chained. I am not imprisoned. So I may have a PhD, I may be very smart, I may be a psychologist, I may have studied in a hawza for 20, 30 years. If I am addicted to anything, and we all are addicted to something or the other, that is why we're not all enlightened. If I'm addicted to anything, I am not true to my fitrah, and I have not experienced real love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a number of you have asked me this question already, that you have been talking about tabi'a and fitrah. How do we start? Where do we go? What is the first step? And in the last lecture, inshallah, I will try and explain this in more detail. But this is a starting point. You want to experience the love of Allah, you want spirituality, you want to move to fitrah, you want to become a butterfly, go home and ask yourself, what is my biggest addiction right now? And then give it up. It will not be easy. There will be withdrawal symptoms, because Tabi'a will fight not to come out of the cocoon. Tabi'a does not want to leave the cave. Tabi'a does not want to come out of the flower pot. Tabi'a does not want to come out of the greenhouse. But give it up. You will not see the connection right now, but you will see this difference. Then look for another addiction. Then look for a third one. Then when you think you are free of addictions, look for a fourth one. And as you do that, you will liberate yourself. And that is the path to becoming fitrah-oriented.
In the final part of the lecture, Brother Khalil described the constant battle within the human soul. The Tabi'a, he explained, seeks quantity and immediate pleasure, while the fitrah seeks quality and lasting fulfillment. Even the way people imagine paradise reflects this struggle. Many are attracted only to the physical descriptions of Jannah, yet the Qur'an teaches that the greatest joy of paradise is closeness to Allah and speaking directly with Him. To the Tabi'ah, that may sound uninteresting, but to the fitrah, it is the ultimate dream. He reminded the audience of the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. The price of your soul is Jannah, so do not sell yourself for anything less. The Tabi'a, Brother Khalil said, is constantly changing and never satisfied. The fitrah, however, is steady and loyal because it seeks only one thing, Allah. To illustrate this truth, he referred to the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. As an infant, Musa alayhi salam refused to drink milk from any woman except his own mother. Spiritually, Brother Khalil explained, this symbolizes the reality of the human soul. Just as Musa alayhi salam would accept nourishment only from his true source, the human heart will never be satisfied by anything except its creator. This is why Allah declares in the Qur'an, only in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find peace. Every addiction, he concluded, is merely a false pacifier. Each day, addictions call to people and try to control them. But when a person chooses Allah over those attachments, their power disappears. Brother Khalil ended with a practical challenge. If a person truly wants to begin the journey of transformation, they must start with honesty. They must ask themselves a simple but difficult question. What is my biggest addiction? And then, with sincerity, make the intention to give it up. The process will not be easy. The Tabi'a will resist. Withdrawal will be painful. But every broken chain brings the heart closer to freedom. By removing attachments one by one, a person slowly begins to taste real liberation. This, Brother Khalil reminded his listeners, is the essence of spiritual growth, the movement from being Tabi'a-driven to becoming fitrah-oriented. It is the journey of freeing the butterfly within. And the message he left echoing in their hearts was clear. True freedom is not found in satisfying every desire, but in surrendering every desire to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you for watching. Let's make a difference together. If this video inspired you, hit like, follow, and share it with others. Your support helps spread knowledge and positivity, building a community where we all grow. Every like, follow, and share makes an impact. Let's keep the momentum going.